is Mona Abramson. My name is Mona Abramson, and I have the pleasure and the honor of chairing the Westchester Jewish Council Interfaith and Intergroup Committee and Roundtable. We've had a very interesting few years where we've met with very important people in the community and have exchanged ideas and experiences about what it means to be a multi-community community. In the time of COVID, things have changed a little bit for a lot of us, but we have overcome, and I've been very proud of our community, seeing it really go from strength to strength and make this lemon into a lemonade. And what we wanted to do is highlight some of our wonderful engaged people, leaders really in the community for interfaith and intergroup. So it is my honor and my pleasure to have with us a panel today to talk about the ways of strengthening interfaith and intergroup relations and outreach during and after COVID, and representing different faiths and groups in our community, in our Westchester community, presenting thoughts on how communities can work together to build bridges now and post-COVID. Our panel will consist of Dr. Marnaza Freddy, Dr. Elena Prokaryo Foley, and Ms. Martha Lopez. And we will introduce one of each of them at a time, and we will hear from each of them first, and then have time for Q&A. So thank you for joining us in this important discussion. And it is now my pleasure to introduce Dr. Freddy. Dr. Marnaza Freddy is Professor of Religious Studies and Director of the Holocaust, Genocide, and Interfaith Education Center at Manhattan College. She teaches courses on Islam, the Holocaust, genocide, comparative religion, and feminism. Very important topics, each on their own. Her recent book, Shoah Through Muslim Eyes, was nominated for the Yad Vashem International Book Prize for Holocaust Research and the Jacob Schnitzer Book Award. She's currently working on a book titled The Wounded Muslim, and co-edited book on international approaches to the Holocaust. In 2019, Dr. Freddy was awarded the Costello Award for teaching excellence in the School of Liberal Arts at Manhattan College, which is right here in Riverdale. I encourage all of you to visit. Dr. Freddy obtained her PhD from University of South Africa, and MA and BA from Syracuse University. Dr. Freddy, it's a great honor to introduce you. You've been doing amazing work in our community. We've had the pleasure and the honor of hearing from you and meeting you and visiting the special museum that you feature in your college. Without further ado, we'd love to hear from you about your reactions to what has been happening now during this very special period.
Oh God, thank you so much for having me here today. And I'm also going to say that I'm also very honored that this is the legacy of Mona Abramson. She is now stepping down, so this is a celebration. And I want us to all applaud her for her wonderful work. And I also know in different capacities through AJC, but especially being such a great interfaith leader. So it's crucial, it's so crucial that we celebrate each other in this way, especially at this time. There has been a lot of difficult moments for faiths during COVID, but also the last 2 weeks. And I hope tonight we can show our solidarity and a real show of peace, a crucial time to have these conversations. I always say, let's engage and not disengage, because once we disengage, we lose the rhythm, the love, and the warmth that we have for one another. So since this is an interfaith panel, I wrote something as a rumination about the past year, or which I call about human resilience and faith. Last April in 2020, social media had exploded with images of beautiful Seder plates, Hebrew greetings, photos of menorahs, the Star of David, and some cartoons of the plagues that imagined that the biblical characters were wearing masks through the Exodus. Passover is one of the highest of the holidays for Jews, and a time to rejoice the redemption of the Jewish people. The deep and profound holiday that occurs every year is a time when Jews were redeemed by God. As you all know, it was when God unleashed 9 plagues upon the Egyptians, including turning the Nile River red with blood, disease, livestock, boils, hailstorm, and 3 days of darkness. So if you were watching social media, a lot of these conversations were going on in terms of what is COVID? Is it a plague? How do we deal with this? Is this a biblical moment? I wondered how we would celebrate the redemption of a people when we were surrounded by the thickness of COVID, and how were Jews going to see this irony this year? Jews celebrated, rejoiced everywhere, even while they were locked down by the virus, and some went immediately to feed the poor and to line up outside mosques and outside churches to help one another, to help the sick, and gave so much through this holiday. This was the resilience I saw in the Jewish community. Later on April 12th, we witnessed pale blue, pink, yellow images of Easter in the media, decorated with iconic rabbits, decorated eggs, homemade basket, biblical verses, all symbols of faith, symbols of rebirth and renewal. We paused to wish everyone a happy Easter virtually. Families gathered via technology to wish one another and sit around the table to celebrate the resurrection of Jesus Christ. During the month of Lent, Christians are encouraged to find their own method of confronting our sinfulness, remembering their mortality, giving thanks for the gift of salvation received through life, death, and resurrection. This too kept me wondering, how could we celebrate a holiday of salvation while we were under quarantine, especially in New York? But watching Christians and Jews and Muslims get together and feed one another and help the poor was the most touching live performance I've ever seen. The virus has given us a moment to pause, reflect, ask questions of salvation, redemption, and about who we are as people of faith. The value of God had seemed to be intimately resurfaced amidst the thick blanket of the virus, with some making proclamations and others asking for health and forgiveness. Then on April 24th, 1.5 billion people celebrated Ramadan. This year as well, because of the lockdown, many Muslims were affected by the lack of congregational prayers and greetings and iftar, the breaking of the fast. However, mosques too opened up their doors. Ramadan was even more powerful in light of how we take for granted not just food, safety, and comfort, but the love of human beings, families, and most important, the poor and the unhealthy. Each holiday had its transformative message of power, of change, forgiveness, redemption, renewal, and charity attached to them. And my interfaith plea was to listen to one another deeply as we move through the virus that has impacted the world, regardless of religion, nationality, gender, and economy. For Muslims, zakat means that which purifies. Just as ablutions purify the body and salat purifies the soul, so zakat purifies possessions and makes them pleasing to God. With so much on the surface, we also experienced George Floyd and the demonstrations and the peace marches where people were confused and fighting, and there was all kinds of confusion. So a lot of the work that we had to do was social justice and remind ourselves of the racism that still takes place in this country. As Muslims, Jews, and Christians, we bonded together. We got together on the steps of the City Hill, and we condemned racism. On the steps of City Hill, which is in New York City, the City Hall, we condemned Asian American hate. And also, not too long ago, in 2019, I stood in Brooklyn in front of 35,000 people at a rally and spoke up against anti-Semitism. My students were involved. What did my students do? They created vigils, even during the COVID era. We had campus events where we brought in Muslims and Jews and Christians together to speak up for one another, and especially recently in terms of anti-Semitism and Islamophobia. With so much going on, students also raised money for Guatemalan families. They brought in strollers and they had beds for them, warm clothing for families who had absolutely nothing. They learned about food insecurity, which is 1.8 million people in New York City, and working with groups such as Food and Justice in Queens, Brooklyn, Bronx, Manhattan, Staten Island, Catholic Charities, Homes and Hearts, Jewish Community Relations in New York, Hindu Society, City Harvest, Hungry Free America, Council of People's organization based in Brooklyn. They were all Jews, Muslims, Christians, Hindus. Everybody came together at this time. This is human resilience. And there were days when 90% of clients that took this food from different places of worship, it was their first time ever having food. And this is why we all got together. We saved their human dignity by making it anonymous, where they could go to fridges and take whatever they wanted. It was the first time that people were unemployed, that they were hungry, and they were unsheltered. And so by this, I think the most important thing in the messages of our religious faith is that we have to do equally for each other. And when it comes to crisis, we are all Americans. We are all New Yorkers. We live in this state and in this city to help one another regardless of faith. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Freddy. It's really inspiring and enriching to hear what you've done, and we will get a chance to get into it a little more. This is what has been so beautiful about our work together, that I've had the privilege of hearing and listening and knowing what you guys are doing, and sometimes working with you. So thank you again, and we'll have a chance to ask some questions, please, everybody in the audience. If you have any questions, please post them, and we will ask the panel after they've each made their remarks. It's now my great pleasure to introduce Dr. Elena Prokaryo Foley, who works at Iona College in New Rochelle, New York, and holds the positions of Brother John Driscoll Professor of Jewish Catholic Studies. She's a professor of religious studies and the director of the core curriculum. She chaired the religious studies department for just under 8 years and teaches courses in Catholic systemic theology, Jewish Christian relations, and the Holocaust. She is the co-editor of 3 books and has published in various academic venues. Dr. Prokaryo Foley holds the PhD and MA degrees in theology from the Divinity School of the University of Chicago and the BA in theology and philosophy from Fordham University. It is my great pleasure to introduce Dr. Prokaryo Foley.
Thank you so much. I want to thank Mona Abramson and Karen Hertz-Everett, Pam Goldstein, and Elliot Forsheimer for planning this event and inviting my participation. It has been my privilege to participate in previous WJC Interfaith Intergroup Roundtable work, and it's always fun and it's always a privilege. It's also a privilege to be on a panel with Martha Lopez, whose work in Westchester has benefited the community in so many, many ways. And it is always a privilege and fun to work with my dear friend, Dr. Marnaza Freddy, as you just heard, a very passionate scholar for peace and justice. So thank you for that beautiful reflection, Marnaza. My remarks ended up going in a different way. I should have paid more attention to the title, Ways of Strengthening Interfaith Intergroup Relations, but I'm going to give a little reflection on a vision of interreligious dialogue. And if we buy into this vision, and if we agree that this is the work we do, if we recommit to it, then that's a first step in strengthening what we do in the post-pandemic world. So this past Sunday was Pentecost Sunday for Roman Catholics and other Western Christians. It concludes the long season that begins with the introspective and penitential 40-day journey of Lent, moves into the solemnities and intense liturgies of Holy Week, continues through the 7 weeks of Easter, and culminates in the celebration of Pentecost, the giving of the Holy Spirit in the Christian tradition. The scripture proclaimed at Mass is rich and the symbolism of the descent of the Spirit is inspiring, metaphorically and literally. In theology, we speak of the Spirit as being breathed into us, as the Latin etymology of the word indicates. Everything about the Pentecost Mass got me thinking, and I might note that I was listening to it on my iPhone as I walked up and down my driveway. That's been my Mass practice during COVID. I'm almost ready to go back as vaccination rates rise. But everything about the Mass got me thinking about our collective work in interreligious and intergroup relations. The reading from the Acts of the Apostles says, "And suddenly there came from the sky a noise like a strong driving wind, and it filled the entire house in which they were. Then there appeared to them tongues as of fire, which parted and came to rest on each of them. And they were all filled with the Holy Spirit and began to speak in different tongues as the Spirit enabled them to proclaim." The reading goes on to list how people were gathered from many regions, from Rome to Mesopotamia there in Jerusalem, because it was just after Passover. Yet everyone could hear the stranger or the traveler, if you will, from many different countries in their own native tongues. Out of many tongues, there was understanding. And I kept thinking throughout the liturgy that those of us who work in interreligious and intergroup relations speak many tongues. We come from many different social locations, and each and every one of us has many different identity markers. Yet, we are united in our quest for solidarity for the common good. Many tongues, many languages, but the one goal of the common good is shared, as Marnaza so eloquently depicted for us. One of the other readings for the day says that the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, generosity, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. So I know that this list is full of both goals and virtues, and the virtues move us to those goals. Again, we do the work of interreligious intergroup relations, pre, during, and post-pandemic, to move us toward the common good. And with that will come love and peace. It's not easy work. And often it's not feel-good work. It is careful work, born of respect for the other and the need to uphold the human dignity and human rights of every individual in our communities. Let me offer my hope for our interreligious and intergroup labors, again drawing from Pentecost. The psalm for the day was Psalm 104, and we antiphonally recite verse 30. "Come, Holy Spirit, and renew the face of the earth." It may sound lofty, but that's what I think our work can do. Inspired by our different religious traditions, inspired by whatever name our traditions give to the Spirit, the divine, the holy. Working for interreligious, intergroup understanding can, in fact, renew the face of the earth. Hans Küng, a highly influential Swiss Catholic theologian who died just a few weeks ago, famously opined that there can be no peace among the nations without peace among the religions, and there can be no peace among the religions without dialogue among the religions. The work of the WJC's Interfaith Intergroup Roundtable contributes to the goals I have identified: solidarity for human dignity, building the common good, and with Hans Küng, building peace among the nations by building peace and understanding among the religions. And in a COVID pandemic-shaped world, we do indeed need to work together to renew the face of the earth. In a pandemic-shaped world, how does interreligious and intergroup work function? I think we actually continue to do what we have done with masks and Zoom and other accommodations. And again, Marnaza made that work clear for us. And I think there's a logic to the work. And that's what I hope to provide just now. A few years ago, I addressed a group of college seniors about to graduate. And I suggested to them that the elements of the good life are standing, bending, and lifting. Interreligious intergroup efforts involve the same dynamics and do indeed or can lead to a good life. We know the famous quote from the ancient Greek mathematician Archimedes, "Give me a place to stand, and with a lever, I will move the whole world." We all have a place where we stand, and our religions ground us in that place and provide a lever. Our standing gives us the ability to articulate our moral vision for the common good. In interreligious work, we respect and learn from each other's standing. We do not dilute our stance in interreligious dialogue, and we must be able to account for our stance to those who ask us to. Yet standing is not everything, and we must be able to bend. Critical thinkers can bend. Compassionate and merciful thinkers can bend and recognize the perspective of another. Our visions can veer off course, and we can miss a truth that is right in front of us if we rigidly and uncritically hold to something that we thought to be true or productive. Strong in our stance, we can admit when we are wrong and are in need of a course correction. Our standing is strengthened by our capacity to see in new ways, which is engendered by panels such as this. The courage of our convictions is in part visible in our willingness to consider another perspective and to allow ourselves to be changed by it. In interreligious work, we stand and we bend, but we also lift. We have the obligation and the opportunity in interreligious work. We have the privilege and the joy to engage in lifting, that is extending the heart of compassion and the hand of service. We come together to learn about each other, to learn from each other, and to help each other. Our Westchester community is a complex Venn diagram of overlapping communities. That sweet spot in the middle of the diagram where we all overlap is where this interreligious and intergroup work happens. Inspired by the Spirit, it is where we bring together educational and service opportunities, all to promote human dignity, solidarity, and the common good. When we stand, bend, and lift together, we build bridges of understanding that help us navigate crises such as the pandemic and difficult disagreements that will inevitably arise. At Iona in this past year, the Jewish Catholic Studies program provided opportunities for us to learn about each other's religious traditions, to confront difficult moments in the relationship, and to build bridges of understanding that strengthen our relationships. As everybody did, our programming moved to Zoom. With partners like the AJC and HHREC, we hosted a program on the opening of the Vatican archives and the significance of that event for understanding the role of the institutional church during the Holocaust. We examined the influence of religions on voting, the dynamics of anti-Semitism, and how the Albanian Muslim population saved its Jews during the Holocaust. Along with the New Rochelle NAACP and the Interreligious Coalition of New Rochelle, we hosted 2 programs on Black-Jewish relations. I look forward to continuing this work and hopefully seeing people in person next year, the next academic year, and building new partnerships as we move from a pandemic world shaped by fear to a pandemic world shaped by vaccines. One of my goals, and it has been for a while, but I really want to work on this, is to start engaging middle and high school students in this work, which I think is best done in person, not on Zoom, but I could be wrong. So I do believe that we can take our inspiration, that breath of life, from our religious traditions and renew the face of the earth by committing to interreligious and intergroup work together. It is hard and painstaking work that has its setbacks, to be sure. But let's stand, bend, and lift together, and we can continue to get it done. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Elena. It's, you know, you each bring such different and equally inspiring messages, each in your own unique way. And we are the richer for it. Lots to think about, which we'll discuss a little bit, hopefully. Our third and not least, last but not least, presenter is Martha Lopez. Martha Lopez is the assistant to the county executive for Immigrant and Community Affairs. She serves as a bridge between the government's programs and services and the Westchester immigrant community. In addition, she's the Director of Minority and Women-Owned Business Development. Martha is also an elected official in the City Council of New Rochelle in her spare time. Martha served previously as the Director for Hispanic Affairs for Westchester County. She has spent over 40 years being in the community in Westchester and serving as a bridge between the community and the county government. Martha Lopez is a recipient of the Dr. Martin Luther King Human Rights Award for her efforts on behalf of immigrants. She has a master's degree in social work from Columbia University and a bachelor's degree from Lehman College in sociology. There's much more work that Martha has done in the community in various positions, but we thought we'd let her speak to us, and that would be the best thing if you hear her voice. So it's my pleasure to welcome you, Martha Lopez.
Thank you so much, Mona, and thank you so much for all of the work that you have done. To Dr. Prokaryo, to Dr. Freddy, I enjoyed so much listening to you, and I definitely need to read your books. There is so much that brings us together, and as I hear you, I get excited about all of the work that has been going on, and I want to start by thinking, going back to March of 2020. We're here in the office and we hear that everything is going to be shutting down. That means the schools are being closed, businesses are closing, restaurants. We have the immigrant community losing their jobs. We're talking about babysitters, not being able to work, housekeepers, day laborers, and in so many different ways, they are not able to find any assistance at that moment. This is in March, right? We look at the seniors who are homebound, many of them not being able to reach out to their families because of COVID. They couldn't really go out, and no one wanted to make, they all wanted to make sure that they were fine and not sick. So what is happening back then, as I sit here, is that something with all of the different issues happening and all of the different challenges, something extraordinary starts to come together. We get many phone calls of people that are saying, we want to volunteer. We get all of our local governments saying, what can we do? The not-for-profit agencies, the houses of faith, everyone knocking and saying, we need to do something. What can we do? While we are trying to make an assessment and looking at how we can help, we start to see that many of the soup kitchens and food pantries are delivering food. Many of our homeless are lining up because they do not know what to do. This is something that I remember last year when I was working with the largest soup kitchen food pantry in New Rochelle. We were serving meals. Other not-for-profits were making sure that they were bringing to the seniors what they needed. The schools were serving the daily lunch to their kids. The parents, the immigrant parents that did not know where to go, were connecting and were saying to our not-for-profits, we are here, we don't have a job. And while we don't have a job, we want to be able to help. We're talking about another sector of the community, the undocumented community. The undocumented community, unfortunately, was not able to get any social service assistance from the government. They were not able to get any help. So what happens? The houses of faith gather, all of the different not-for-profits, the bilingual, bicultural agencies come together. And while so many families begin to lose relatives, and while we hear that the number of people that are dying are not able to get a proper funeral, all starts with the assistance of others helping in so many different ways. This is something that was amazing. You know, Dr. Freddy spoke about social justice and coming together and the human resilience. And I have to tell you, I will not forget about the human resilience when there were so many different issues, when we had to be covered because we did not want to bring COVID to our households because we didn't want our loved ones to get sick, right? It was amazing that Westchester County became one. And we are all one. And today, as I hear you both, and Dr. Prokaryo, who says, you know, we are united and the respect for each other. It's amazing. It's amazing because when we partner with our local organizations, with our schools, with our food pantries, with our soup kitchens, with all of the community centers, we make Westchester stronger. We have made Westchester stronger because we have partnered, because we are working together, because as I mentioned, we are all one. And here we start first trying to get the test that it was almost impossible to get, right? And then we move on and we want to make sure that everyone gets the vaccine. And I have to tell you, so many people working in so many different ways that it is amazing when we put together our wonderful Women of Westchester Conference. We wanted to recognize the women who have lifted us up. There were several categories, some of them related to faith, businesses, community, women issues. And we began to get hundreds of nominations, hundreds of what women were doing in Westchester to take care of each other. It was, unfortunately, we only had 6 awards. But if we could really give an award to all of those hundreds of women, it would be amazing, because when we read about other people nominating them and letting us know, these are regular women that just stepped up to the plate and said, Mask, we're gonna do it. Helping restaurants, helping those people that I mentioned at the very beginning that were not getting any assistance. Guess what? People are donating money. We are working with the bilingual bicultural agencies, and now we are going to help them. Tenants who have not been able to pay the rent, the county immediately saw that that need was out there, and we immediately worked with the Department of Planning and made sure that they get the rent paid. Restaurants were closed for a long time. Theaters were closed. And all of those people that were not able to get the money, artists, you know, when you think about our Terrytown Music Hall or Jacob Burns Film Center with those wonderful films, right? It's like being closed. What can we do to help them? As I see everything coming to an end, hopefully soon, I think of all of the different challenges that each of us faced, and how we confronted those challenges, and how we became that bridge to make sure that we made that connection. Hearing you together, I feel that I am so honored to be here speaking with you, because without you, without all of the assistance, without Westchester Jewish Council and Mona, all of your different initiatives, we would have not been able to work with so many other people. You are the connectors. You are the ones that give us the strength. And I just end up by saying, you know what, we are all one. I want to thank you again, and I hope that we can continue our work and continue to make Westchester a better Westchester for all of us. And to all of our immigrant groups, our immigrant communities from throughout the world, I am so blessed to be here working with all of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Martha. Thank you. Thank you. What a joy and an honor to hear from you. And the theme of immigrants, I think we can all relate. We're either in our generation or previous generation, we've all been immigrants. I personally have been an immigrant twice, was born in Germany in a DP camp, went to Israel with my parents, grew up there, then came to America with an American husband, and here I am. So just one, and I know, I would love to hear if you have stories about your immigrant families and status. I would love to hear that. And I would like to hear how you felt the community has reacted to your outreach efforts, or what needs you've identified that you think, we should, strengthen. So anyone. And please unmute yourselves when you, and of course, any other opportunities that you see that we could then use forward. Marnaza.
Yeah, I just want to say that this last year, there were two specific things I worked on, two projects. One was to educate students about what is an asylum seeker, who is an immigrant, what is a refugee, to give them case scenarios of why they're even coming to the border, because we had this whole border problem and politics, and then we, through Homes and Hearts, which is in Westchester, worked with them very closely. They came and they gave information, like educational kind of workshops. And, it really opened up the class's mind. They had no idea what these words meant. They had no idea why Guatemalan families were coming over, risking their lives. They had no idea what was going on the Mexican border. And I think, so my answer is education, right, is number one. The way we talk about the other, Elena referred to this in her presentation, the stranger in all of our traditions,
Right,
is welcome, right? This is the whole point. So I think this is one of the things I think we need to do, is start to, reflect on these terms that we use for people who are coming to the country, newly coming here. I'm an immigrant. I wasn't born here.
right.
And when I say that, people look at me like, what? But yes, I'm an immigrant. I came here in high school, Scarsville High School, by the way, just up the, street. And so I have all this, sort of like different, and I was raised in Europe and Middle East. And I was always sort of like, I always feel like I'm in exile, but it's a good exile because I always belong everywhere. So that's one thing. And there's a second project I did is on food insecurity. And we have had food insecurity in this country for a long time, but we've never had it on this level, where senior citizens were standing in line till 10 p.m., 11 p.m. in the winter, right? And people were working around the clock. And the other thing I want to say about this, people who are working, Martha, you mentioned people who came out, we never recognized them as frontal workers, but they really were the frontal workers. They weren't getting paid, but they were in front. And so that's one thing that, I think my students realized too, working on these projects, how important they were. And they were so relevant, right? Relevant to what was going on in the world. And I think education and awareness of how we talk about people as othered, right? And not American. And what does that mean? And this idea of the immigrant. And two, we should not let anyone go hungry in this country, ever. The richest country, basically. So, this is another thing that my students learned, and they kept giving and giving and giving. And I think starting that spark with younger people, it's essential in terms of work. That's what I'm saying.
Beautiful. Elena.
I'm actually going to I have two short things. In terms of obviously I agree with everything Marnaza says in terms of education. That's why we do what we do. And I have the benefit of my husband, the other Dr. Prokaryo Foley, also works at Iona College and is in charge of mission and ministry. So he spearheads all of the social justice and service work. So in a time of COVID, as we know, we moved, we did things electronically. There were the amazing, courageous people, as Marnaza just said, being on the front lines, feeding people who were newly food insecure and those who had been. So things like moving an on-campus tutoring program for community kids, which we've had for some 20 plus years, onto Zoom. And then faculty actually got involved with, they had never been involved with that. That was usually a student volunteer thing. So students and faculty just to engage with children one-on-one in a Zoom room. Again, bringing people together, getting past the ignorance that we have about each other. And we think there's so much, as Martha said, we think there's so much that divides us, but there's so much that brings us that really doesn't. And so there were those opportunities as well. And Marnaza's talk really laid out, beautiful things in terms of ritual and liturgy, how people came together, and Martha in terms of the critical food needs. So I think any education that helps us break down differences helps us then do service together. And the reverse side of the coin is if we can just show up and do service together, that's one of the best ways for us to break down our differences. And because you have casual conversation, it's not like you're standing apart from each other in this polarized world in which we lived. And, I am white and Catholic and a member of such and such political party, so I could never agree with you. But if you just show up to say it's a good thing to clean up this park and make it safe for the children, and everybody agrees on that and they start working, then they get to know each other. And then like 2 projects down the road, they find out, oh, you're Democrat, you're Republican. That doesn't matter. We're friends now, right? And I think that's so important. A lot of my teaching in this school year focused on anti-Black racism because I was working in a freshman seminar. And I had someone from England in my class who was just really surprised and happy to learn. And she specifically said, because now I know I can think about this in my own country in a different way and learn more. So just some different thoughts to bring together.
And what you both spoke about, absolutely, I agree with Marnaza about education, because certainly, if we bring the education to the different communities about what is going on, how can we help each other? And also Elena talking about, all of your efforts as well. And I'm thinking about what I saw that I didn't think that was a big problem, but it was. And with so much now being, with technology, when we were trying to get all of our restaurant workers or our seniors vaccinated or our immigrant communities to learn about different programs, we noticed that many of them were not able to log onto a computer, were not able to really make an appointment. So we were working around the clock trying to work with many other organizations, setting up their appointments, bringing them their food, doing what needed to be done. But Marnaza, you talk about the essential workers, and these essential workers, remember, there was a time when we were all so scared to even go out, and yet we needed to eat, we needed to go out and buy groceries, we needed to go to, Costco or, Target, etc. And there they were, working, making sure that we had what we needed. And so certainly all of these things that are being addressed are so important. And that is why dialogues such as this are extremely important, because we can come together, we can talk about the need, and then we can talk about how to move forward.
Thank you. Thank you. Very, very worthwhile answers. And I love the community spirit here coming together. And so that really triggered a question, which Karen just expressed to us from a member of the audience, a member of a board of organization that brings Israeli reservists, IDF reservists to Westchester. Is there a way to have them participate in the interfaith community? I lost it, sorry. Interfaith community and program to help bring people together the way you're doing. Is there a way that they can help? Is there a way they can, incorporate themselves? So
Yeah,
I would like to invite, I'm sorry.
Oh, Martha, go ahead. No, go ahead.
I would like to invite anyone who's interested in learning more about the different immigrant groups. We have an Asian American advisory board here at the county. We have an Arab advisory board, an Asian and an African American Hispanic advisory boards. We would be more than happy for you to come and visit us, and certainly tell us how you would like to participate. Also, our soup kitchens and food pantries are always in need of help, and they are not shutting down. On the contrary, they're very busy. I was telling Mona that there was a need for opening also a kosher food pantry in New Rochelle, and it was opened just a couple of months ago. So anything, whenever we have anyone calling us and asking us about a specific situation, we are more than happy to hear what your idea is and to work with you and to make sure that we attend to that issue.
fabulous. Anything else? Okay. Excellent. So this is, community coming together from outside, from inside. I love that thing. So Karen asked, how do we spread the message and educate those beyond our circles, those who need to hear, learn, understand the other, those who express the hatred of the other and participate in acts of violence? Unfortunately, we've experienced it, as you mentioned, Asian Americans, we know Jewish Americans, anti-Semitism is off the charts. I mean, beyond, it's at the highest level of all hatred that we hate to be such achievers. So how do we educate, spread the message? And you guys, a lot of you are educators, whether formal or informal. So I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Can I say something?
Sure, Manaz.
I want to say that's a really good question. It's a question I think we all ask ourselves. I know Elena does, I do. And I call it, how do I speak across the divide, right? But then you have to say, well, what is the divide? For example, one of the things that I've done, which people didn't really like on my campus, is when the Muslim ban was put out. Of course, it upset me, it upset my family, I'm Muslim. But I also wanted to have a town hall on campus, and I called it, "Is the Muslim ban important?" ? And my friends said, "What are you doing?" My colleagues were like, "What are you doing, Mehnaz? Why are you even asking that question?" I said, because it's a town hall. It's to bring in other people and other students that may have a reason for having a Muslim ban, and they just looked at me blank. But I'll tell you about that town hall. We had students who supported the Muslim ban and raised their concern about security and national security. We had a conversation with them and people who were Muslim there, kids, right? Muslim students. So it was one of the best town halls we've had in a long time because the question was open-ended. So I think it's how you create your event. It's, I think, also who you invite. If you're going to be selective about who you're inviting, it's also about whether you have a balance in terms of the speakers. And I mean speakers, whether they're a male or a female, but they have different political understanding. But the one thing we do come together is on these issues is that we do need to feed people. And it doesn't matter where you stand. You don't want to see someone hungry. So there's a lot of ways we can create that by creating this engaging space, right? And I know that safe space is used a lot. I don't agree with that word completely because then I feel like you're not really having a conversation. So, but I know what safe space means in terms of creating safety for students. But I also think that these are incredibly difficult and challenging conversations. And I've done interreligious training on this kind of work, where I've had, evangelical talk to Jewish Orthodox or Muslim Shias, talk to Muslim Sunnis. All kinds of stuff has gone on, and there were incredible experiences. Not always comfortable, but incredible.
Worthwhile. Well, anybody else? Elena?
Well, I was thinking when I heard the question, because as Marnaza said, we're always, we don't want to speak in an echo chamber, and that's the heart of the questioner's question, that we should challenge ourselves to invite someone of different thinking to each of our programs, right? So, when we send out our notices by mail, email, snail mail, whatever, we should probably start encouraging people, bring someone who's never come and who might not agree with what they think the speakers might say. I don't know how that would work. I don't know how I can do that with my mailing list. But it is a question we're always trying to get at. A little bit easier for us with just students, because they're kind of there for us, right? And Marnaza is, giving us good examples there.
I was in the process last year of putting together a program where students from different backgrounds would come together and sort of like breaking ice first and how well you know me. Because many times, just like within the Latino community, thinking, okay, everyone is Mexican. And, or like we are there to force everyone to start eating tacos and speaking Spanish, right? And so one of the things that I really hope to be doing is that program and working in collaboration with the Boys and Girls Club, and certainly with different other organizations such as the YMCA, and certainly colleges as well, and how well you know me. I really would love Marnaza and Elena to really talk to you about it and see how we can put it together. I think that it would benefit all of us in so many different ways, and just to learn what, how well you know us, program.
Great idea. Great idea.
Sounds amazing. I mean, someone, Karen asked, is there an infrastructure for social action committees of different houses of faith and worship to come together, find each other, to collaborate? I think we've just done some of that work right here, bringing people, that, and you guys are the chosen ones, because you each have been doing such amazing work in the community and trying to reach out. Go ahead, Marnaza.
Yeah, so I live in Westchester, but I do work in Riverdale. And one of the things that we've done in Riverdale is we have an interfaith clergy group. Somehow I'm in that clergy, but I'm not clergy. Everyone knows that technically, but that's okay. I'm a woman. I want to be clergy, especially in the Islamic world. So anyway, that joke aside, I think that is something that is important to have. Only because they're leaders of churches. We have a mosque leader, a Bengali mosque that's just down on Broadway. We have all of the denominations in Riverdale that are Jewish, and we have my center. So we can bring in Catholic students and also the Catholic church there, but also our Catholic college. I think you're asking a very important question: is how do you tap into that? And I think that I don't know if there is something like that, but it's worth thinking about in Westchester to create that, because they can be like 5 or 6 point people, and then you can work on projects together, have barbecues. I think that works well. Yeah, Elena.
Great, Elena.
No, thank you for the question, because it got my wheels burning, because it is, we do have to intersect more across the county in many ways, and we do it with the WJC, AJC interreligious breakfast, but I'm thinking these things do exist at more local levels, right? So there's the Westchester, or rather, I mentioned the New Rochelle Interreligious Coalition.
That's right.
There's a White Plains Clergy Coalition.
Right.
There used to be a Rye Women's Interfaith group. so my wheels are spinning, and thank you for the question from whomever it came, because
Karen.
I'm thinking, I know people, we need to sit down at a table and generate a list of what we know, and then go start knocking on doors, because we need, WJC coordinates all the Jewish organizations. We need some coordination of the various interfaith efforts, because, we've got centers like Marnaza and programs like mine and my friend at Purchase, but we need to get the grassroots groups, the social action committees of the different houses of worship connected to the larger umbrella groups, because then we could create a communications infrastructure. And I think this is what I'm going to talk to my husband about over dinner, because he's got a lot of contacts.
This is great.
So maybe this will be something that comes out of this, that some of us can work together on coordinating.
Yeah.
I also want to just mention one thing. Right now, there is the height of anti-Semitism, but I also want to say that my center raised $8,000 for the 4 synagogues that were vandalized in Riverdale.
I remember, thank you.
And we just gave the check this week, and I gave it to the rabbi saying, this is exactly the moment where a Muslim woman from a Catholic college is going to give you, this is what the peace offering is about, because we have to humanize each other, and we are Americans at this time. So one of the things I want to say is that, and I want everyone to know on this call, is that the donations came from Muslims, Catholics, my students donated, Jews donated. It was so diverse because, I could see the names. I've never done a GoFund before. I was so thrilled to see the kind of diversity that came together. And, people said, well, why are you doing this? I said, I'm doing this because the windows represent, and doors represent something to me of a synagogue, right? And those are broken. And this is a way that we help each other with our windows and doors, opening and closing of each other. And I want people to know that those things really mean a lot to a community. If we can do that in other communities, for immigrant communities, all kinds of things, that we can actually do, so that it becomes a blessing in a sense, but also, wow, this Riverdale came together and actually helped pay for all this, which is amazing. So I want to thank all the people who donated, but it was really nice to do that.
Beautiful, and that's so inspiring. And the windows and doors theme is going to be our theme going forward as a community. I want to thank each and every one of you. You've been an inspiration. And I just hope to be in touch. And I know you will be in touch with Westchester Jewish Council, which I know they want. And Elliot Forsheimer, our executive director, wanted to just say a closing word. So thank you again on my behalf, and go ahead.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mona. I'm honestly humbled to have the chance to close. We do so many meetings, and I'd like to close and say thank you, but I'm not worthy of anything now. We're in such a crazy space, and the people on the panel and people who are taking part in this webinar today is part of the solution, and I wish everybody health and energy. There's a saying in Judaism that the day is short and the work is great. Mona can do it in Hebrew a lot better than me. Or a similar saying is that if you have a big job, give it to a busy person. And I guess that's my parting words to Mona as she completes her tenure as chair of this group and turns it over to Karen, who will lead us into great ways, in the same way Moses turned it over in the Bible over to Joshua with the help of God, of course. I'm truly humbled. As was said by each one of you, we have to double down in what we're doing for the sake of ourselves, our children, our parents, everything in between. But Mona, just out of my heart, from so many people who have worked with you for, I'll say decades, but I don't want to embarrass you, but it has been decades. Thank you. And so I wanted to take my prerogative as from the council and make that public thank you. So
Thank you, Elliot, and thank you, WJC Westchester Jewish Council, and thank you, my co-chair, Karen Everett. Thank you, Pam, who's been indispensable and wonderful. And thank you, Martha, Marnaza, Elena. Thank you so much for being part of this community, and I know you will keep going from strength to strength. I'll be watching.
Thank
Love you.
you.
Bye-bye.
I hope to
you.
keep in touch with all of you.
Thank you so
Absolutely.
much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Elliot.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Mona.
Shalom.
Thank you. Shalom.
Shalom. See you soon. Bye-bye. Thank you.